So I think we can probably dive into the DNC a little bit, start watching some speeches.
Yeah. So first we're going to show um, two speeches. They're both pretty short. They're both secretaries of state. One is John Kerry, who is the second Secretary of State under Obama after Hillary Clinton, and then there was George Bush's first Secretary of State, Colin Powell.
Hi, I'm John Kerry. For the 8 years of the Obama-Biden administration, we led by example. We eliminated the threat of an Iran with a nuclear weapon. We built a 68-nation coalition to destroy ISIS. We forged a 195-nation agreement to attack climate change. We stopped Ebola before it became a pandemic. Donald Trump inherited a growing economy and a more peaceful world. And like everything else he inherited, he bankrupted it. When this president goes overseas, it isn't a goodwill mission, it's a blooper reel. He breaks up with our allies and writes love letters to dictators. America deserves a president who is looked up to, not laughed at. Donald Trump pretends Russia didn't attack our elections, and now he does nothing about Russia putting a bounty on our troops. So he won't defend our country, he doesn't know how to defend our troops. The only person he's interested in defending is himself. This is the bottom line. Our interests, our ideals, and our brave men and women in uniform can't afford 4 more years of Donald Trump. Our troops can't get out of harm's way by hiding in the White House bunker. They need a president who will stand up for them, and President Biden will. Joe's moral compass has always pointed in the right direction, from the fight to break the back of apartheid to the struggle to wake up the world to genocide in the Balkans. Joe understands that none of the issues of this world, not nuclear weapons, not the challenge of building back better after COVID, not terrorism, and certainly not the climate crisis, none can be resolved without bringing nations together with strength and humility. Joe understands our values don't limit our power, they magnify it. He knows you can't spread democracy around the world if you don't practice it at home. And he knows that even the United States of America needs friends on this planet. Before Donald Trump, we used to talk about American exceptionalism. The only thing exceptional about the incoherent Trump foreign policy is that it has made our nation more isolated than ever before. Joe Biden knows we aren't exceptional because we bluster that we are. We are exceptional because we do exceptional things. On June 6, 1944, young Americans gave their lives on the beaches of Normandy to liberate the world from tyranny. Out of the ashes of that war, we made peace and rebuilt the world. That was and remains exceptional. It is the opposite of everything Donald Trump stands for. This moment is a fight for the security of America and the world. Only Joe Biden can make America lead like America again. If you agree, text JOIN to 30330. Thank you.
Former Secretary of State Colin Powell. 100 years ago, a young immigrant left a dirt farm in Jamaica and set out for America. 3 years later, a ship pulled into New York Harbor and a young Jamaican woman gazed up at the Statue of Liberty for the first time. They became my parents, and they inspired me to finish college and join the Army. This began a journey of service that would take me from basic training to combat in Vietnam, up the ranks to serve as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and Secretary of State. The values I learned growing up in the South Bronx and serving in uniform were the same values that Joe Biden's parents instilled in him in Scranton, Pennsylvania. I support Joe Biden for the presidency of the United States because those values still define him, and we need to restore those values to the White House. Our country needs a commander-in-chief who takes care of our troops in the same way he would his own family. For Joe Biden, that doesn't need teaching. It comes from the experience he shares with millions of military families, sending his beloved son off to war and praying to God he would come home safe. Joe Biden will be a president we will all be proud to salute. With Joe Biden in the White House, you will never doubt that he will stand with our friends and stand up to our adversaries, never the other way around. He will trust our diplomats and our intelligence community, not the flattery of dictators and despots. He will make it his job to know when anyone dares to threaten us. He will stand up to our adversaries with strength and experience. They will know he means business. I support Joe Biden because beginning on day one, he will restore Americans' leadership and our moral authority. He'll be a president who knows that America is strongest when, as he has said, we lead both by the power of our example and the example of our power. He will restore America's leadership in the world and restore the alliances we need to address the dangers that threaten our nation, from climate change to nuclear proliferation. Today, we are a country divided, and we have a president doing everything in his power to make it that way and keep us that way. What a difference it will make to have a president who unites us, who restores our strength and our soul. I still believe that in our hearts, we are the same America that brought my parents to our shores, an America that inspires freedom around the world. That's the America Joe Biden will lead as our next president. Thank you very much.
So, a lot to unpack there. The reason why I wanted to show both of these two, because like, keep in mind, these are two people in very different parties, or different parties. But they all essentially had a very similar message referring to, foreign, like mostly relying on foreign policy, and talked about Trump cozying up to dictators, and which as far as his dealing, him trying to work out a nuclear deal with North Korea is probably one of the best things he's tried to do, in my opinion. Because we don't want to use the Gaddafi model with them, but they also talked about they use the same phrases that neocon and neo-lib war hawks always use. They use the terms like spreading democracy.
Yeah, that's even what the Trump administration does.
Yeah. And they also used John Kerry alluded to the idea of American exceptionalism, like saying, Joe Biden said, we are exceptional because we do exceptional things. And then Colin Powell used the phrase, we lead by example, and basically he used the phrase example of our power.
Yeah.
We
lead
do
by the
show
power
our
of
lead in
example.
example.
We lead by the power of example, and we also lead by example of our power. And where has that idea of example of our power, where is that manifested in
Inequality,
and also on the world stage, all of the foreign interventions that we're involved in.
What stands out to me most is that neither of these two speeches sound like endorsements. They sound like, if I were, just presented into this situation with somehow zero context of the presidential run, I would think that both John Kerry and Colin Powell were running for president themselves. It struck me as very much, especially the Colin Powell speech, and my parents came here, there's going on about his record. It struck me,
I think he's more so trying to beat around the bush because he is Republican still.
It sounded like a campaign speech. It sounded, very, very rhetorical.
Yeah.
Not very substantiveful. That's not the word. Substantive.
Yeah. And the thing is, Colin Powell is a more moderate Republican. I guess, if I'm being the kindest to him, his story is that he was lied to by the Bush administration. And and we all were, and he was not really knowingly setting us to a false war.
Well,
But,
I do feel he was complicit in that.
Absolutely.
And a lot of the information that they did take, I felt it was cherry picked.
Yeah. But we all seen that image of Colin Powell giving a UN speech with the yellow cake file.
Yep.
But Colin Powell is a Republican. Like he's a more moderate Republican. He's like, according to conventional wisdom, he is a more moderate Republican. But like this was not like, it's not like he was the only Republican talking at the DNC.
No, he wasn't.
Not by a long stretch. In fact, there was a tweet that showed like 3 separate speakers from the 1996 RNC who made appearances at this DNC, along with Kasich was like a representative. There was a couple other ones mentioned in that tweet, and there was Michael Bloomberg, who up until recently was Republican.
I think we need to be careful though about criticizing Republicans for speaking at the DNC, because as much as I want to criticize Colin Powell and John Kasich, for their speeches or on their own grounds, it is admirable that they decided to speak at the convention of the other party. I think we do need all the help we can get if we want Joe Biden to get elected. So I just think.
Well, yeah, I do think so. That's very brave of them. But I would say I do agree that we should kind of be careful for criticizing Republicans. The thing is, if you're criticizing both Democrats and Republicans, I don't really see an issue.
Well, I just mean bringing up that there were Republican speakers at the DNC who also spoke at the convention for the Republicans several election cycles ago. I don't think it's a point of the fact that, I don't think the fact that they are Republicans speaking at the DNC is a point, is all that I mean.
Like, but another thing, like, I do agree that we should try everything to try to get rid of Trump, even if that does mean Joe Biden. I can definitely understand that sentiment. But at the same time, like, why aren't they actually trying to appeal to progressive voters? Because that they would have a better shot at reaching that base if they actually try. At least I would feel that way. And
I think that's a problem across the board with these politicians.
And also, like, trying to cater to Republicans kind of like diminishes like the little hope that there is amongst the progressive community that's saying like, okay, like they're trying to like tell me to vote for Biden because he's not necessarily progressive, but we have no shot at any of those progressive reforms that we want unless Joe Biden is elected and Trump is kicked out. I mean,
I do say
if moderate Republican voters knew about Joe Biden's record, I think that his running would be enough to convince them to vote Democrat. But Trump has been spouting all sorts of stuff about how Joe Biden is turning to the far left, and he's embracing all these far left policies and stuff, which isn't true. So I think having these other moderate Republican speakers is actually useful, and I think could change the minds of a lot of moderate Republican voters. But the point about it, disillusioning the progressive side of the Democratic Party is, holds a lot of water and is very true.
But
like, it feels like they are trying to like disregard the so-called progressive values we quote hold and trying to integrate them into more conservative values to bring over that spilled over angered Trump vote.
Yeah.
And I do agree that we more so should focus on the non-voter base and the progressive base, because we have more power in the non-voter and progressive base than we do like disenfranchised Trump voters.
Yeah. Also, like, I would add, I don't think anyone except people who are like the too far gone Trump supporter crowd really bought into like the narrative that Joe Biden is some Trojan horse for the left.
I mean, I hope so, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think anyone who remotely pays attention to like Joe Biden's record, just like the Democratic Party in general, knows that Joe Biden is no Trojan horse for social.
I just don't think Joe Biden is as well known by the American people as all of these DNC speakers made it seem. Everyone was saying, like, there was a line repeated a lot that Joe Biden knows the people and the people know Joe Biden, but I don't know how true that really is. He wasn't, no.
Yeah, I agree.
What say about that?
Yeah, it wasn't very much visible in the Obama administration, as far as I could tell.
And to the extent that he was a meme.
I mean, honestly, like if you look back in history, do we even remember like vice presidents off the top of our head? So it's like,
Dick Cheney was able to seize a lot of the power that he was able to.
Dick Cheney's
Yeah.
probably the exception. Yeah.
But like,
Yeah.
well, that was the thing when it was actually the Bush administration, he was able to seize that much power without many people knowing really who he was. So like I guess that was what made his tactics very effective, because like he was able to do that without people knowing. So that's why he was so successful. And so there was other speeches, but real quick, I want to do a throwback thing with John Kasich, just because like this shows that John Kasich is not some like voice of reason from the Republican Party. He's just as much a buffoon as Trump. He's just, there's like a more polite veil, I guess,
yeah,
about John Kasich than there is about Trump. Trump is like this unhinged moron, whereas John Kasich definitely seems more measured and more moderate. There just seems to be this general theme in which we measure how left or how right someone is based on based on their cadence, like how they speak, rather than like their actual policies. Because when it comes to policy, now I would argue that John Kasich is an extremist, because he was a union buster.
Yeah.
He was notoriously anti-choice. He was against gay marriage. He was extremely anti-regulation. But anyway,
I
but to
think
show,
just very quickly, I think much of Trump's buffoonery comes from his presentation, and so it's easy for a lot of people to look at someone like John Kasich, who seems like he can sit in the chair still and stuff, and he can read off a teleprompter at a reasonable rate, and they think, oh, he has a brain, but that's
this seems like a respectable politician.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's
I mean,
something
it's just status quo.
the Trump era has instituted into our political process. The idea of presentation, I mean.
Yeah, this was so like the clip I'm about to show is from John Kasich's 2016 run, and so like this was he was visiting, like this was like before the New York Republican primary. He was I think this was New York. He was visiting yeshiva, the yeshiva, which is school for like Orthodox Jewish people. And like as Sam Cedar said when he was covering this clip, and by the way, like check out that clip from 2016. He was absolutely funny. But yeah, like as Sam Cedar described it, these people don't just study the Bible; they study the commentary of the commentary of the commentary of the commentary of the Bible. So
that's
like
what a lot of people don't realize about the Jewish tradition, is that it's very interactive and constantly developing and changing, which is a bit different from the Christian tradition.
Yeah, but yeah, like these people like know a whole, not, they pretty much like know the Bible from the back of their hand, or like or the Torah. But
and that's like the basic of their studies. Most of it is outside of that. Yeah, like commentary in the Bible, like interpretations of the Bible, or the Torah. Some Jewish people refer to it as the Bible, but they only really have like what Christians consider the Old Testament. Right. Well, the Jewish Bible, it's just different. Go ahead and play the clip.
But yeah, but just like this is John Kasich seemingly trying to educate yeshiva students on Bible basics.
The story of the people are Abraham, when God made a covenant with Abraham, not Moses.
Yeah, but
What did he say?
but you know what? In our prayers, yes, we do mention Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Yeah, like
But
they were important.
but it's when we refer to the laws, we refer to the laws of Moses and Israel.
Oh my God.
So Moses is up there. Moses is up there.
Yeah, I believe it. So is Isaac and
Well, let's see if we can find a book that would.
Oh my God. Does he not understand the difference between the covenant and Abraham?
What do you guys do?
What?
Where do you study?
Overseas.
And what are you studying?
Talmud.
Okay, but what are you
Is
learning?
it Talmud? Yeah.
Well, what is your lesson? This Shabbat. This is Shabbat.
Most of the Shabbat and stuff.
The laws of the Sabbath.
Yes. You know who I like? Joseph. You guys like Joseph? You studied Joseph?
Yeah.
What did you think about Joseph? Did you hear what the most important thing Joseph said to his brothers? My brothers, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good. Did you know that?
Yes.
What am I going to ask? What is going on here?
They're awestruck. They're awestruck.
No, do you know this? Yes. Because brothers, they hated him, because part of it, he may have been a little bit of a braggart, Joseph. He may have been a little bit, maybe. But they threw him in that ditch and
He's always just parroting his Sunday school lessons.
into slavery. And that's how the Jews got to Egypt. Right? Did you know that?
Yes.
Yeah.
What? Who knew?
Like they wouldn't know how the Jews got to Egypt.
Yeah, but then he was telling his brothers, like, you're going to worship me, and they're like, what? Right? So he really didn't like them. But
Jacob knew that his dreams were in fact going to be fulfilled. He didn't want to say that.
do you think Jacob knew that?
It said that Jacob really knew.
Is that in the scripture?
Yeah, but he didn't want to develop further jealousy. So he said, my wife and I, we're going to bow down to you. But he really knew that it would be.
Great story. It's one of my favorites because I can't figure out what Joseph ever did wrong. Most of the people in all the Bible, whether it's the New or the Old, all have flaws. I'll tell you another guy.
They don't have a
any
new or
flaws
old.
that I can see.
Testament,
Joshua.
It's just a different translated
Joshua
version.
was another great leader. You know about Joshua?
He's just looking at it from a Christian point of view. That if you act
I know
immorally,
he was. I know that.
that's not necessarily.
I'm gonna have to teach him.
That's not
I'm gonna have to
necessarily
ride
how
around
Jews
all
read
day.
their
Newman will teach him.
Very special gentleman, Rabbi Silver.
Rabbi Silver has the local Jewish community council.
This is. So he doesn't understand what the covenant of Moses is.
But they refer to it as the laws of Moses because it was Moses that came down with the 10 Commandments, or like the Christians call them
Well,
the
he
10
came down with the
Commandments.
entire Torah, yeah.
Yeah, and then
Abraham, all the covenant of Abraham is circumcision. That when a baby's 8 days old, they should be circumcised, and that's how the people of God are to be identified. So I don't know why he's leaning on the Abraham so much.
But yeah, it was Moses who came down with the 613 commandments, as the Jewish community knows them. But yeah, you guys were like, I don't know if you heard it, because Alex was talking about something, he was like, you know who else I like? Joshua. He's like, Joshua? He's like, yeah, he's the disciple of Moses. He's like, I know that. He's like,
Yeah, Joshua was, he led the Jews to the promised land after Moses died.
Yeah.
There's a thing like,
Don Kasich knows that, Alex.
This thing I can't figure out what Joseph did wrong, but that's not really you can tell that's not the point of the story. You just have to go 2 layers deeper to understand that the Jews needed to end up in Egypt so that God could, liberate them out of love and then develop a covenant with them. Moses. I mean, you don't have to study very much of this to realize how wrong Kasich is.
Yeah. But yeah, that was pretty funny.